This month's ebook, written by Dom Sorrentino and designed by Courtney Meyer, Case Study Questions, How to Get Satisfied Customers to Make a Case for Your Brand. I think this is such an important topic because case studies are incredibly powerful marketing assets, typically used as middle and bottom of funnel type of assets to help people make purchasing decisions and get an idea for what it's like to work with a particular company or use their products or services, because they are real stories. They provide social proof for the value, the effectiveness of a product or a service. They're typically used in B2B marketing, but they are very important for B2C marketing as well, where storytelling is so prominent and such an important part of most marketing strategies. And in essence, a case study is a success story of someone truly finding value in a certain company's products or services. Of course, the quality of the case study, the effectiveness of the case study is going to depend on the story that you can tell, and that depends on who you speak with. Choosing someone who was very involved in the decision to work with your company, someone who faced the problem that your company helped solve firsthand, that person is going to give you deeper insight into the benefit that working with that company or their products or services can bring. Typically, you might find this from the different people at your company who work with different clients. And you may also find that, especially in B2B type of case studies, there might be numerous people involved in the decision to work with a different company. So being able to identify who will give you the best insight into that decision can help you get a better idea of the story and the problem and the solution. Every good case study begins with an interview, and of course, technology has allowed us to interview people in many different ways, which Dom outlines here. My personal favorite is, of course, in-person interviews, because you get those unrehearsed answers. You can read their body language a little bit better. Just being able to have a more natural conversation can really guide your interview and get more information about the problem that they were facing. Of course, phone and video can also give you a lot of detail and have a pretty conversational interview with them. And email is an effective way to interview people, but there are some drawbacks to it. While it is super convenient, especially if people have conflicting schedules or are struggling to find a time to meet, that is a benefit of email interviews. But email interviews can also kind of allow them to formulate their answers, make them sound very rehearsed. So a potential downside to an email interview is less effective quotes. In most cases, when you are talking to someone for a case study, recording your conversation can help you pinpoint really excellent quotes later on, and help you remember small details that maybe you missed when you took notes. Of course, it's always, always, always important to ask permission to record a call or a conversation before you actually begin doing so. As far as the law goes, in certain states, it is illegal to record without permission or without telling the other person. But even in states where this isn't the law, it's always best practice to get their permission before moving forward with that. And just to have a record of consent, it's generally a good idea to first ask if it's okay to record, then turn on the recorder, and then repeat the question so that you can record them giving you permission. The questions you ask and the order in which you ask them are two really important aspects of getting a great understanding of what was going on before the person became involved with your company. So this general kind of timeline for the interview that he laid out here is a pretty good one, beginning with the introduction, kind of easy questions, getting background information, and then leading into the problem, figuring out what exactly was the issue that they were addressing, and then finding out how they decided to address that problem. After that, moving into the benefit of the solutions they chose, not just the immediate ones, but the long-term impact as well. And finally, looking ahead. This is a really important part of a case study because the case study is ultimately going to be a resource to help someone decide to begin working with your company. And by not just by illustrating the benefit that a certain product or service can take, but also the power of your relationship between the company and its clients, proving the potential for the longevity of the relationship can definitely make the case study just a little bit more powerful and show future clients that they are working with a quality partner. Of course, there are lots of questions that you might have that you may be able to find out yourself. It's important to do research ahead of time and get those answers. Basic things like when a company was founded or where its headquarters location is, things like that. Anything that you can find out yourself, try to leave that out of the interview to make the most of your time with that person. The person is taking time out of their day to speak with you and being respectful of that time and only asking them things that only they would be able to tell you is generally the best way to approach that. Dom outlines 12 tips when you're going into a case study interview that I think is good for anyone to keep in mind when they're approaching this type of asset. He talks about just kind of basic things like writing down your questions so that you remember the key things you need to ask them, but then also remembering the order in which you intend to ask them, and things like asking open-ended questions. This is really the best way to get a strong quote because it's more likely to be filled with detail. It's more likely to be in the form of a complete sentence and will probably include a little bit more background information to put their situation into greater context. And then going into asking follow-up questions, asking for more detail, tips on how to direct the way the conversation goes so that you can get all the information that you really need, but kind of controlling the situation if the interviewee begins to kind of go off topic or give you things that aren't super relevant to the case study. In that first half of the ebook, Dom kind of goes over an overview of what a case study is and gives us a good idea of how to approach one. And in the second half, he goes into the specific questions that you might bring to your case study interview. Going back to this timeline from earlier, the introduction, problem, solution, benefit, and looking ahead, he gives us questions for each of those stages. Of course, not every case study interview has to include all of these questions, but these are a good kind of jumping off point for formulating your line of questioning for the interview. These background questions will give you a little bit more context for framing your case study, giving the reader a better idea of the starting point that they're coming from, looking at the particular problem that they have. A lot of these questions here in this section and the other four are really phrased for B2B type of interviews, but they can easily be adjusted to be B2C as well. Just finding out, for example, instead of provide us an overview of your company and your role and responsibilities in it, asking the person about their hobbies or what they are involved with or things like that. This question too, like I said, you don't want to ask a question that you can easily find the answer to, but this is, while you may be able to find a person's job title or a brief job description through perhaps their LinkedIn or a bio on their company website or something, a question like this will give you a little bit more insight into what their actual day-to-day really looks like, which you're not going to get just from looking at their title. So just knowing the difference between something you can find online and a more nuanced answer that only they would be able to provide can help you really get into some deeper information to include. Going from the background questions to the problem questions, this will give you more context around the issues that they were really facing, but then also how those issues impacted their day-to-day or their customer satisfaction or the rest of the teams that they work with at the company. Getting to know the broader impact of a particular problem can, A, it gives you more information about how they are dealing with that issue, and B, it makes it a more powerful, impactful case study. Someone reading it is going to connect with a real problem that has real pain points associated with it. Moving from the problem, of course, to the solution, getting to know how they chose the solution that they did and why, and even how they first discovered it. How did you first hear about our products and services? I think a question like this is good not just for the case study, but also for your broader understanding. Both the marketing and the sales sides of a company can benefit from this type of information, even though most companies already have a general sense of idea of how people are discovering them. Getting that firsthand account is obviously invaluable. Questions like this, asking about the implementation, that will give the reader a better sense of what it is really like to work with your company. Because, like I said, a person reading a case study is most likely trying to figure out how to approach a purchase decision. And so they're not just vetting the solution itself, the product or the service that they would be investing in, but also the company that they would be working with. So being able to humanize that company and demonstrate how easy it is to work with them or how fast they answer questions or how helpful they are, all of that can benefit the point of a case study. Of course, a solution to a problem can go far beyond just the immediate resolution and into positive residual effects that maybe were unexpected or a metric that is higher than they expected or something like that. Getting information about not just how the solution solved the problem, but also how it changed the direction of the way a team works together or how a customer walks away from a purchase or what have you. Getting to know those intangible benefits can always add strength to your case study. And finally, the what's next, this looking ahead type of question, being able to demonstrate that your company is not just a good solution provider, but also a helpful partner, can instill confidence in a potential customer, showing them that you have lasting power, the longevity of your relationship. It's always a powerful thing and something that people think about when they are making a decision, especially in a B2B context. Now, with those 21 questions, Dom finishes by saying, now that you have those answers, you can go ahead and write your case study. A case study, of course, is more than just the answers itself. It's about pulling it together, creating that compelling story with each type of question, but then also making it look nice, putting those subheads to guide the reader through and help them scan the content, adding imagery that either makes the content look more visually engaging or helps to illustrate a particular point or explain the product that you're describing or something like that. Visual context can always help improve a case study and make it more engaging and informative. Once you finish your interview, that does not mean that you are necessarily done communicating with that person. You might need to ask clarification on certain points or ask follow-up questions. But more importantly, once you finish your draft of the case study, it's always a good idea to share it with that person. Ask them if they would make any changes. For example, if perhaps you got like a statistic wrong or misquoted them or something, they'll appreciate the opportunity to clarify or correct. And also just giving them information about how you're going to use the case study when they can expect to see it live on your site. It'll make them feel better about it, and they would also be more likely to share it with their colleagues or audience as well, which is always helpful. So there we have it. This is case study questions